Hey, Philip, why does Karl Marx dislike Earl Grey tea?
I don't know, Tommy. Why?
Because all proper tea is theft.
All right. I think that's the first time I've got or I've heard a leftist Jad joke.
Yeah,
We need more of those.
this feels like the right space for that. So I was really
Oh yeah,
excited. That's the one that last week I had, and then I didn't give, and I was like, I wanted, but I want to do this. I want to do this pun, and now I got my chance. Uh,
yeah, that's so good. Now you really raised the bar though. If we're gonna like that, you may have peaked us too early on the dad joke thing.
Well, hopefully, I will make up with that with some quality improvements. As a lot of you maybe have possibly noticed, sound quality could be a little bit better. I've got some sound deadening that is curing in the other room right now, and I'm working on getting a whole brand new camera set up so that, it's not 720p in the year 2021.
It's 2022, so yeah, even
2022. I
worse.
don't know what year it is, but I know that we are definitely. This is like the lo-fi hip hop of viewing that is going on
Yeah.
with this podcast.
Well, if we live in the timeline where years from now we're incredibly popular and we have like a million followers on YouTube, there'll be the we're giving the indie cred to the people who are like, I was there during the 720p in 2020 days or 2022 days.
We're just gonna keep rewinding that clock, and
Yeah,
let's do
yeah.
that. Let's do that,
Can we
please.
please go back?
Um, so let's talk this week about something that nobody wants to go back in, and what we all desperately want to and need to go forward in. There's a reason I started this off with a Marx quote. This week we're going to talk about parental leave and the absolute clusterfuck that it is. Um, so before we begin, let's talk about how much parental leave we are respectively like that we're about to have, or that you had during your children. So I'm taking 2 weeks of sick time for my own paternal leave, and Kathleen is taking between 6 and 8 weeks of maternal leave. How about you?
I don't know what my current company's is because it hasn't been relevant to me in a while. Uh, but when I had newborns, it was under two different companies. In the first one, it was 2 weeks by policy, but my manager looked at me and said, please take as much time as you need. I will make sure that you get it in that way that, he was willing to break whatever rules or things, not gonna make me put it into my PTO or whatever, which was very cool of him. I ended up taking, I think, maybe 3 or 4. I forget. It was 9 years ago now. Uh, and for my second one, I was working for a startup where I took to. They didn't really have a policy, so um, I took to because we were already in the middle of a big dev push, and I could already tell the CEO was unhappy with me for taking to having the inconvenience of having a child in the middle of his feature development cycle. So, um, you know, I only took a couple and then went back to work.
So, and I'm and your wife, how much? I mean, did she? Sorry, I
My wife is fortunate enough uh, to be a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't have to have. I mean, she simultaneously had zero time off and no time off. So
right.
as the stay-at-home parent is blessed and or cursed with. So um, yeah, that's kind of uh, she's a stay-at-home mom.
Right. So yeah, so that gives us, I think, an outline for where we are, and I think we're both extremely privileged, or on the extremely privileged end of the scale. I know most places I've worked, a lot of places I've worked didn't have sick leave, much less maternity and paternity leave. And the whole thing I'm going to get into in this episode is how I hate that that's all bound together. Like we bind sick leave with maternity leave in a way that I have a problem with. But also, yeah, like a lot of places don't even have sick leave. It really relies on FMLA, which we'll get into that. But so before to now to roll into it. So what is maternity leave? Which seems like an obvious enough question, but obviously it isn't because we don't have guaranteed maternity leave. So the people who are writing our laws and making decisions in our country and voting on things clearly don't have a solid idea of what maternity leave is or why it's important. So it's leave for during pregnancy and after delivery for the purpose of the mother and the baby's health and wellness. Pregnancy is hard on the body. Postpartum is hard on the body. A C section is a major abdominal surgery. Uh, and as well as all of the recovery aspects of this, in which any other form of surgery or thing going your body goes through would typically most people would expect much longer recovery periods. Um, there's also an element of babies just requiring this time with their parents. We have just mountains of data on the importance of skin to skin contact between a baby and both of its parents. This is something that is very important in the first uh, couple of months of development for babies. It's something that like coming from my wife being in the veterinary community, it's a thing that is very understood in the veterinary community that you never separate a dog from its puppies until generally 8 weeks being the general rule. And it's also uh, I hear a lot of the frustration of how we are more understanding that puppies need to be with their mom for 8 weeks than we are understanding about the idea of that babies need to be with their parents for 8 weeks. So,
Yeah, I was even going to mention, although it's not the point of the episode here, and I'm absolutely certain this is an entire episode series on its own. Uh, if memory serves, at least when my wife and I were having children, uh, getting skin post like immediate like after delivery skin to skin contact was extra. You had to pay for that. It's like, why do I have to pay for you to hand me my baby? That's like that's like peak late stage capitalism shit to me.
mm-hmm. Right, and that is that is the next note on our outline. This is all in direct conflict with wage labor capitalism. Once you put together all of these realities together, it does not collide with wage labor capitalism. Um, so then that brings us to what is paternity leave? Because and this is a question that I do see and hear brought up still quite frequently from people of, well, why do dads need off? Dads aren't going through pregnancy, aren't going through delivery.
uh,
Well, leave for during so paternity leave is leave for during pregnancy and after delivery for the purpose of the mother and the baby's health and wellness. It's the exact same thing as maternity leave because from the paternity aspect, and this is, and I want to be very clear, this isn't just men. This is uh, whomever is that second part of or second or more part of that relationship with somebody. Um, for that other half of the relationship, you are that support person. You are caring for this person as they go through possibly a major abdominal surgery, as well as just dealing with pregnancy, postpartum health, pregnancy, delivery. All of that stuff is a big rolls into this. It's also it allows for the partner to a pregnant person to perform the around the clock support role, which is, yeah, that's and again, like just like we set up above, babies require, we see again mountains of data showing that it's not just skin to skin contact with mothers, it is skin to skin contact with both parents is vitally important. Um, so yeah, you've got to be home to get that. If you're at work 12 hours a day, you are not going to get that skin to skin contact and developmental contact with the baby. And again, all of this conflicts with wage labor and capitalism. If you can't have one parent home for 8 weeks, you sure as shit can't have both parents home for 8 weeks. It'll destroy our capitalistic society. Nobody will be at work. There'll just be babies everywhere. And what will we do?
and I want to be clear, like 8 weeks is a pretty bare minimum type shit. Like there are places in Europe and other locations around the world where like you get significantly longer than that. I've even heard as high as 6 months.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah,
It is far below medically recommended, which is again something we'll get to here shortly.
yeah. I
Um,
I get so frustrated when it comes to this kind of stuff because like it's the it's such a good example of like the like cold hearted violence of the whole thing in terms of like um how the system interacts with people because like you get you're like you said, it conflicts with wage labor and capitalism. There's this idea of like we need people at work being productive 100% of the time, and then it's like, okay, well, you gotta take off. And the thing that like is especially gross about it is like these are this is PTO that they grant you supposedly as part of an employment if it's paid, which I mean that's another thing that we'll get to later. A huge, at least in the U.S., there's a lot of leave that is unpaid here, which is like what a joke. Yeah, that is. But um, there's so much like lack of sympathy for like what's good for children, all from the people that will also do the whole think of the children bit when it comes to other policies. You know, they just like talk in one end of their mouth and out a different end of their mouth on a different issue, and it's just like the hypocrisy is so transparent, and yet um, so many people don't see it.
yeah. And that's, all of this. It is, and it becomes this hegemonic view of this idea of what's possible. Well, it isn't possible to give this kind of appropriate, what we all kind of see is what would make sense and be appropriate and function. Well, it's just not, it's just not possible within the realm of capitalism. It reminds me very much of during the pandemic when I was doing virtual learning academy stuff, and because these kids couldn't be in school because of a pandemic, and there being this big push of like, well, we got to get these kids in school. Well, okay, if you want to do that, you have to solve this pandemic issue. No, 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 no. We can't deal with that. We just have to get these kids in school, because if the kids aren't in school, their parents aren't at work, and everything is going to collapse. And it's like,
Oh, wouldn't it be a shame?
you just yeah, and that's where this hegemonic thing of like it so illustrated to me. For me, it was the first time I had really seen and understood how parenting has became in the United States, and how it has became this thing that is directly averse to capitalism. The idea of any parent, either parent, staying home and parenting and just taking care of a child as they grow up is directly averse to capitalism. And
Yeah, that's an untapped market, man. We could find someone to do that professionally and pay them wage labor to generate profit for capitalists some more.
yeah, and I mean, and then that brought into this whole other element of it is like, as we were working in this virtual learning academy, what had really ended up functionally happening is it wasn't safe enough for kids to be in school. So they had to find a place for kids to be at with people who worked for less money than the people who were in the schools. You don't actually address these issues. You just kick the can down to a lower paid worker who, by virtue of being a lower paid worker, can accept a higher degree of risk. And yeah, and I mean,
Yeah, well, and the frustrating thing is the whole time the conversation is framed by, like you said, what's possible, which is not used as a real call for analysis. Like no one who says like we have to stick to what's possible. We got to be realistic. They're not going in and saying like what's the most beneficial thing that we could get away with that wouldn't just like completely uh you know uh explode everything at once. Like and the frustrating thing is because like that's not wrong in the sense of like it's not wholly idiotic or whatever. It's true that there are suggestions that are too big of an immediate shift to do tomorrow or next week or whatever. Like if someone's like, we should have a post money society, that's cool, but that's going to be a lot of restructuring, a lot of rethinking that if you try to do all of that at once is probably going to result in violence. So like, yeah, if you want to aim for that, we're going to have to be realistic and do the next possible thing, in my opinion. But like giving people maternity leave or parental leave that's a long period of time for the health of children isn't like impossible. You could probably just grab a paper off of the People's Policy Project for paternity leave and slap it into United States law and call it a day, and it would be done. The only reason it's not possible is because it doesn't serve the interests that control all the politicians. Like it's not impossible from a structural or a resources point of view. It's not like we can't afford it. It's only impossible because people who have a lot of money and power don't want it to be possible. But that's not what impossible means.
Yeah. And another critical element of this of this hegemonic element of this is that we view it because within our life it potentially is existed within our lifetime, so therefore we view it as this thing well that's just the way it is, the way it always has been, and the way it always will be, and it absolutely fucking has not been this way
Yeah.
for the grand, vast, ridiculous majority of human history. And I don't. Before I get too far down a human history rabbit hole here, I want to be very clear that historically, women have been uh, like restrained by patriarchal systems within the role of childcare. We don't want to return to that. Like that is not
Yeah,
the
yeah,
path to
yeah,
go
yeah.
to. Like adhering to traditionalism is not the solution here. But to say that it's that or this is fucking absurd. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
because
It's not a
no,
natural feature of the world. It's not like people went, aha, here we are. We see humans in the wild in their natural existence with their exactly 2 weeks of unpaid paternity leave. Like,
yeah, yeah, it's ridiculous, and it is not the way it has to be, and it is not the way it has always been. It is very new, and I want to do an entire episode talking about latchkey parenting and how it fucking led us to here, but that's a whole other episode.
yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about how parental leave looks in the US. So we've talked about what it is. We've kind of dived into what it looks like, but let's dive deeper because specifically the only kind of parental leave that a vast majority of workers in the United States see is FMLA. So FMLA provides employees 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave for themselves or a direct loved one that lives within their home. Well, not just lives within their home, it can also be your parents, but it's a loved one, right? And so
But only if you qualify.
only if you qualify. And it's very important to put a pin on the fact that this is unpaid job protected leave. Really, all it does is say your employer can't fire you because you have a broken leg. Now, this is important. It is important to have this kind of a law in place, and we didn't have it until 1993, and that's fucking absurd. But it doesn't
I didn't realize
actually
it was that recent.
yeah. And it doesn't address any of the things we're talking about. And it really, really, really frustrates me because this is a thing that does come up in conversation a lot when you talk about, like, well, nobody has really a form of maternity or paternity leave. And they're like, well, but we have FMLA. That's like guaranteed leave that everybody gets. And I think a huge chunk of people, specifically managers, which is a real weird classification of people to not get this, don't understand that it is unpaid leave. And the idea for a person who is living paycheck to paycheck, which the vast majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave is that is a direct recipe for being unhoused and hungry.
Yeah, you know that thing that you're doing that's a giant medical thing, where you like grow a person inside of you and you're gonna need a really long hospital stay and constant appointments and checkups and care and tests and everything that basically means you're gonna look at your deductible, schedule a monthly payment plan for that amount, and hope that you have something better than 30% co-insurance so that you're still not bankrupt afterwards. Anyway, so like once you take care of that, make sure you have 12 weeks of savings lined up so that you can take off work because you ain't getting paid. uh how realistic?
It's fucking absurd. And this is for the people who qualify for FMLA, and it is absurd for them. For 44% of American workers, they don't qualify for FMLA. Only 47% of white parents qualify. 23% of Hispanic parents qualify for FMLA. It's like it's not even relevant to most people. And it's bullshit on its own.
I guess like 44% don't qualify. It's technically relevant to quote unquote most people, but like it sure is walking that line in a like and the worst part is it's like a line drawn in the sand that's like they're walking carefully. It's like, oh well, over half of people qualify for this. You're like, if you qualify for it, it sucks. It's not good. Like this line is so far off of where it should be, and it really feels like a um uh what is it, like almost like a honeypot type of thing where it's like no one can seriously look at this and be like, this is good. People will be happy with this. Like it has to be like a thing that was created for the purpose of being like, okay, here you go. Look, you got your victory. Now shut up and go away. Like, and people were like, well, at least it's something. And then like it's not. It's because it exists not in a vacuum of if it was like if this was the only thing that was wrong about society or whatever, like I would be like, well, that kind of sucks, but and maybe we can do something about that, but like it's not that bad. Like there's good safety nets and there's good paying jobs and most people qualify or whatever. Like instead it's like exists in a world in which like also every single time this is happening, someone is walking on the edge of being bankrupted by anything going wrong medically during this entire process, not to mention other like just random broken legs and shit that can go wrong, like all kinds of stuff that is basically guaranteeing that the people who are in this position of getting 12 weeks of unpaid leave are already straining their finances to their limits. Also, we can have children, a thing that humans like. If there's anything that is natural that you can point at humanity and be like, here's a natural behavior of ours, it's having children. It's like one of the few things that actually you can defend with that, and it's made impossible by the circumstances.
It is a scientific qualifier for a life form. One of the and I want to be very well now before I go down this path, I want to be real clear to say that if you're incapable of reproducing, you're just as equivalent of a human being as anybody else.
Right.
Um, but there's something to be said that when we study whether or not something is a new life form, we ask, is it capable of reproducing? Not on the individual level, but as a generality, on a systemic level. Is this
Right.
life form able to reproduce? And the American worker isn't.
Yeah, right. So the American worker is dead. You heard it here first. Or probably not, to be honest. That's not honestly probably a new criticism, but uh,
And I mean, and this gets into like the crux of why it really, really frustrates me how in the process of all of this, all the research I was doing for this episode, everything I could find, even from organizations right now fighting for more parental leave, are lumping parental leave with sick leave. It is always a, well, we need a family leave thing so that when you're sick or if you're having a baby. And this is the thing that really bugs me. Having a baby isn't a broken leg. Having a baby isn't just a surgery or a all of the medical element of this. It's a function of being a human being, and you shouldn't have to pick when you can't. You literally cannot pick between having a medical crisis this year or having a baby, because it is 9 months. You are going through the process of having a baby. Once you throw in that extra couple of months afterwards, you're looking at the whole year process of this that you commit to several months, usually even before conception. And within all of that time, some medical emergency can and likely will happen to you. The idea that you cannot, no, 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 you got to bank all of your sick leave to be able to use it for parental leave is fucking absurd.
yeah, sure hope a pandemic doesn't come in and ruin all of that for anyone. Not like that would happen. Haha.
And then financial experts have the balls to come in the room and ask why birth rates are dropping. And
Hmm. We can tell who's thought about that for 5 minutes and who hasn't.
but now so far we've only been talking about the national level, so I'm sure it's better at the state level, right, Philip?
Oh, yeah. As an Oklahoma native, anyone who's looked at Oklahoma knows that the political situation here is great for left leaning positions. It's
Well,
not.
I have bad news for you. It's bad for a lot of people, other too. Um, so only 9 states have any laws pertaining to paid parental leave.
Hey, that's
Just
almost 20%.
and they're all exactly where you'd expect them. They're all coastal states. Plus, I think Kansas, because Kansas is. Look, as a Missourian, I spent most of my life shit talking Kansas, and I'm gonna say it. Gonna say it right here. Geographically, I prefer Missouri because I like hills, and I don't like being able to stand on top of my car's roof and see to the other side of the state. But Kansas is a better state.
I mean, they have abortion in their constitution, and they have apparently maternity leave at least.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So sorry, I lost my. I got so frustrated. I lost my place in all of this. So yeah, Missouri, the state I'm in, has no laws pertaining to mandated parental leave. To my knowledge, Oklahoma doesn't any either. With
If
an
it did, I
exception.
would probably die of shock.
I did die of shock when I read the following thing. So Missouri does have one exception. One person tried to do it. Governor Greitens passed an executive order requiring all state employees to have an amount of parental leave. Now, to be fair, he didn't stipulate how much parental leave they would get, just some. There would have to be some kind of parental leave for all state employees. And the idea was that, as most of these executive orders, like this is a sign to like, the House of Representatives and all of them to fucking do something about this for the rest of everyone else, which of course they did not. But the dude who should be rotting in a prison cell right now for rape is the only person here who did this thing. Sorry, Philip, I don't know if you know anything about Missouri politics, but Governor Greitens is a piece of shit. That
I
should
mean,
okay.
based on
We're
that one fact alone.
I might I might almost, you know what? Let's almost end this episode on me ranting about Governor Greitens, and I'm unprepared for this. So you should fact check everything I'm about to tell you because I'm probably going to get a little bit off. And also, content warning for sexual assault and rape, and just predatory dude being a piece of shit. So Governor Greitens was our previous governor, and his barber came out and said that first it kind of came out that like he had had a sexual he was married and that he had had a relationship with his barber. Well, what the situation that happened is that he raped his barber. He duct taped his barber to like a some type of like restraint system thing. I don't I've read that it was a chair. I've also read that it was something else, but he restrained his barber, gagged her, blindfolded her, and then forced her to give him oral sex. And ended up in federal court over this and everything. He never really denied it. He just denied that like she didn't he denied whether or not she consented. She did not consent to this. His wife left him. He did was forced to resign as governor, and now we have a new Governor Parsons. The reason why Governor Parsons is the governor is because of this. And then the asshole he managed to barely dodge prison, and the son of a bitch had the gall to run again this year. And I will give Missourians the credit to say that he lost in the primaries, but
Good grief.
he tried to run again. It is,
Some people have brain worms. Like that's just it. You know what I mean? Like this guy's just like I didn't get any consequences for that. Maybe I can dodge the consequences for my political career as well. And at least there was that amount of justice in that moment,
yeah.
as inadequate as that is.
So this episode went off the rails, but I just had to educate you on our
That's
worst
wild.
modern political. And Missouri is a political roller coaster, but oh boy, I mean,
Wow.
we are the state that up until the mid 1970s had an executive order on the books that all oh, who da, 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 Mormons, yes, all Mormons were to be shot and killed on sight in the state of Missouri. It was literally Executive Order 44, and there was a lot of people who have argued that perhaps George Lucas got his idea for Executive Order 66 off of Missouri Governor Order 44, Executive Order 44, kill all Mormons on sight.
That is wild.
Missouri's a state. It is a state. I'll tell
I
you
mean
that.
that is something else. Wow.
I
You know
really,
what I do hear though? I hear Missouri does have an executive order requiring state employees to get maternity leave.
it does. So, and
Uh,
it is still a standing thing, and it is still, as an employee of the state, you have maternity leave, but nobody else does. Um, Now, this next episode, we will dive into what other countries have and what medical professionals recommend, and perhaps most importantly, what you can do to achieve parental leave wherever you are, how you can fight. This is one of those things that, like, as I've been, having more encounter with this now, is, we're getting close to that time, and I'm learning about it and research. All of this was all news to me, and oh boy, am I getting mad about it. And I feel like this is going to be a crux of a lot of my, like, this is going to be a a target point of a lot of my future political action, because it's just one of those things that, like, everybody, like, conservatives don't, like, conservative people, voters, don't disagree. Everybody agrees, no, you should be able to stay home and take care of your kids, in general, if you choose to, but also specifically your newborn. Nobody wants less maternity leave except for management, except for the people who hire employees, and except for shareholders of companies who want to maximize profits. Nobody else disagrees about this. This is something there should be a massive amount of political unity over, there should be a massive amount of political energy over, and there should be a massive amount of political organizing over, and there just fucking isn't. And it makes me a little angry. I really want to know why every single person who is ever out here talking about how, oh, somebody think about the kids, why are you not throwing a Molotov at your local chamber of commerce?
uh, I completely agree that it's a great organizing tool. It's a fantastic wedge issue as well because it forces these people who stand up and talk about like family values and won't you think of the children and all that stuff to explain to their base why yes we care about children and yes we care about family values, but families don't need to be together, they need to be at work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is this week for us. Um, Next week is going to begin in about 5 minutes. We'll start next week's episode just as riled up as I'm ending this episode, but I'm excited about it. This is a pair of episodes that has educated me a lot on a thing that I think a lot of people need to know more about, and yeah, I'm excited. Well, I mean, not excited because this is a dark ass topic that frustrates me, but you know what I mean. It's energizing whenever you learn a new thing that radicalizes you.
Yeah.
But thank you all for joining us. I have no call to action this week, but we will next week. Other than to say, unionize your workplace. Just go unionize your workplace and then come back to us next week. Um,
Yeah, please let us know in the comments if you unionized your workplace this week.
yes,
uh
please do.
um if you speaking of social media, don't forget to if you're watching this on YouTube to uh, like the video, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button. If you want to really support the podcast in a direct financial way, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/raisemleft. And if you want to follow us on social media, we have a Facebook page, and we have um, a I guess a Facebook page is it besides Patreon and YouTube. But I think we're working on getting some TikTok and some other stuff up, so that'll hopefully be uh, out at some point. But yeah, find us on social media, follow us, and it helps us out a lot. And to anyone who shows support, thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, night, or whatever time of day it is. Bye.